The lunch tray hit the floor before Kofi even saw it coming. Soup, rice, and whatever passed for chicken that Tuesday spread across the cafeteria tiles in a slow, humiliating wave. The entire room didn't go silent. That would have been too kind. Instead, laughter rose in patches, spreading table to table like a virus, until the whole cafeteria was in on the joke. Everyone except Kofi, who stood there, still holding the empty tray, staring at the mess at his feet. "Watch where you're going, big man." Marcus, the tallest of the pack, said it loud enough for 3 tables to hear. He didn't even stop walking. That was the worst part. To Marcus, this wasn't even an event worth pausing for. Kofi was a speed bump. Nothing more. Kofi crouched down, started picking up the pieces of his lunch with his bare hands. Nobody helped. A dinner lady somewhere sighed and disappeared into the back. A group of girls at the nearest table turned away, not out of sympathy, but because watching made them uncomfortable in a way they didn't want to examine too closely. He cleaned it up alone. He always did everything alone. Brightwell Academy was the kind of school that had motivational posters on every wall. Dream big, work hard, be kind, and not a single one of them applied to Kofi Mensah. He was 16, overweight, and had mastered the specific art of existing in a place without being acknowledged by it. He sat in the 3rd row in every class. Not the back, where the troublemakers sat, and not the front, where the eager ones raised their hands. The 3rd row was a no man's land. Safe. Invisible. His sketchbook was the only thing that belonged entirely to him. It was a beat-up black notebook with a cracked spine and pages that had started curling at the edges from overuse. Inside it lived things nobody at Brightwell could have imagined. Mechanical arms with rotating joints, a compact drone designed for narrow spaces, a small robot with rubberized wheels and a camera for a face. Kofi drew these things the way other boys wrote song lyrics or sports stats. Obsessively. Privately. Like a secret he wasn't ready to share. He was on the rooftop that afternoon, his real lunch spot, away from the cafeteria and its cruelty, when he heard the door behind him open. He didn't look up. Probably a teacher coming to chase him off. He started closing his sketchbook. Is that a mechanical arm or a crane? He turned. A girl he had never seen before was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, looking not at him but at the sketchbook with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. She was tall, dark-skinned, with natural hair pulled into a large puff, wearing a yellow jacket that had no business being that bright in an English autumn. Neither, Kofi said, because it was neither. It was something in between. Can I see? No. She walked over anyway and sat down beside him on the low concrete ledge with the comfort of someone who had known him for years. He stiffened. She looked at the closed sketchbook. I'm Zara. I just transferred. Mr. Osei sent me up here. Said the rooftop view was worth seeing. She paused. I don't think he meant for me to find a person. I'm not supposed to be up here either, Kofi said. So we're both rebels. She smiled. What's your name? He told her. She repeated it once, like she was making sure she had it right, then said nothing else for a moment. They both looked out over the city below. Traffic, grey rooftops, a single tree in the car park doing its best. You draw machines? She asked. Sometimes. Show me one. Just one page. He didn't know why he did it. Maybe it was because she asked without pity. Maybe it was because she didn't look at him the way most people did. That quick scan, the slight recoil, the decision made in under a second. She was just looking at his sketchbook. So he opened it. One page. The rescue robot. Small, detailed, annotated in his cramped handwriting along the margins. Zara leaned in. Studied it for longer than he expected. This is real, she said quietly. Not a compliment exactly. More like a statement of fact that surprised her. The bell rang below them. She stood, straightened her yellow jacket. See you tomorrow, Kofi. He watched her go. Then he looked down at the sketchbook, still open to the rescue robot. Something felt different, and he couldn't name it yet. Like a window in a sealed room had been opened just a crack. He told himself it meant nothing. He was wrong. The next morning, Marcus and the pack found him at his locker. This was their second favorite sport, after the cafeteria. They didn't need a reason. His presence was reason enough. Marcus took the sketchbook first, snatching it clean out of Kofi's hands before he could react, and started flipping through it with the exaggerated curiosity of someone performing for an audience. "What is this?" Marcus held up a page. "Is this a robot? You building robots now, big man?" Laughter. Always the laughter. Kofi reached for it. Marcus held it higher. The pages bent. Something in Kofi's chest bent with them. "Give it back." His voice came out quieter than he wanted. "Make me." And then a voice cut through the noise like a blade. He said, "Give it back." Everyone turned. Zara stood at the end of the corridor with her bag on one shoulder and her eyes fixed on Marcus with an expression that was completely, unnervingly calm. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't performing. She walked forward slowly, like someone who had done this before and found it mildly tiresome. Marcus laughed first. "Who are you?" "Someone with a very good memory for faces," Zara said. "And his name is Kofi. And that book belongs to him." The pack exchanged glances. This wasn't how it usually went. People didn't intervene. People looked away. That was the unwritten rule of Brightwell Academy. You minded your business and you kept your head down and you were grateful it wasn't you. Zara had clearly never read that rule. She stopped 2 feet from Marcus and held out her hand. Not aggressive. Just open. Patient. Like she had absolutely nowhere else to be and was fully prepared to stand there until the end of the school year if necessary. Something in Marcus shifted. Not remorse. Boys like Marcus didn't do remorse, but calculation. She was new. She was confident. And the audience was watching her now, not him. He dropped the sketchbook into her hand with a short, dismissive laugh. "Whatever," he said and turned away. The pack followed, already moving on to the next thing. Zara handed the sketchbook to Kofi without ceremony. "Eat lunch with me today," she said. "In the cafeteria. Actual seats, actual table." "I eat on the rooftop." "Not anymore." She started walking to class. "Third period, right? Mr. Osei's class. I'll see you there." Kofi stood holding his sketchbook. Down the hall, Celine, who had watched the whole exchange from beside her locker, turned away slowly, her expression unreadable. Lunch was uncomfortable at first, in the way that new things always are for people who have spent a long time being alone. Kofi sat across from Zara at a table near the window, as far from the pack as the room allowed, and stared at his tray like it owed him something. "You don't have to talk," Zara said, eating without looking up. "I'm not going to force conversation." Silence. Then Kofi said, "Why did you do that?" "This morning." "Because it was wrong. People see wrong things every day here and they don't do anything." Zara looked up. "I'm not people." He almost smiled. "Almost. You're going to make enemies your first week." "I've made enemies in less time." She said it lightly, but there was something underneath it, a history she wasn't unpacking here. Marcus is just noise. Don't let noise make decisions for you. Kofi looked at her. "You don't know what it's been like." "No," she said simply. "But I know what it looks like to carry something heavy for a long time. You've got that look." He didn't answer. But he came back the next day. And the day after that. It was Mr. Osei who changed the next thing. He was the kind of teacher who noticed what other teachers filed away as unimportant. The quiet student in the third row, the sketchbook that never left a certain boy's hands, the way Kofi's eyes moved whenever the robotics club's work was displayed in the corridor. Mr. Osei stopped him after class one Thursday. "The robotics club meets Friday afternoons," he said, handing Kofi a printed schedule. "Room 14. You should come." "I'm not really a club person," Kofi said. Mr. Osei looked at him steadily. The machine you drew in the margin of your geography homework last week had a more sophisticated joint mechanism than anything my current club has built. Come on Friday. Kofi took the schedule. He told himself he was just taking it to be polite. Friday came. He stood outside room 14 for 4 minutes before going in. The room was busy. 6 students hunched over workbenches, components spread everywhere, the smell of solder in the air. Zara was already there, in the corner, working on something with focused hands. She looked up when Kofi walked in and said nothing, just nodded once, like she'd been expecting him and wasn't going to make a production of it. Mr. Osei put him beside a boy named Daniel, who was struggling with the arm assembly of a small mechanical unit. The joint kept collapsing under its own weight. Daniel had been working on it for 2 weeks. Kofi watched for 2 minutes. Then he picked up a pencil and sketched a modification on a scrap of paper, a different bracket placement, a secondary support point. Daniel looked at it. Looked at Kofi. That's it, Daniel said slowly. That's literally it. How did you? The load distribution was off, Kofi said. The joint was carrying weight it wasn't positioned to carry. The room had gone quiet. Mr. Osei stood in the doorway with his arms folded and a look on his face that was very close to satisfaction. Where have you been hiding? Mr. Osei said softly. Kofi didn't answer. But for the first time in longer than he could remember, he didn't want to disappear. He pulled up a stool, set down his sketchbook, and got to work. Zara caught his eye from across the room. She raised one eyebrow, "I told you so," and went back to her own work. He stayed until the room closed at 6. He came back the following Friday. And every Friday after that. Something was waking up inside Kofi Mensah. Slowly, the way seasons change. Not all at once, but undeniably. And the girl in the yellow jacket was the reason the window had opened at all. Neither of them had named it yet. But it was growing. The Brightwell Invention Showcase was announced on a Monday morning. Mr. Osei pinned the flyer to the robotics room board without fanfare, a single sheet of paper that somehow managed to change the temperature of the room. Annual Showcase. Open to all students. Panel of judges including 2 engineers from a local technology firm. Winner receives full sponsorship for their next project. Most of the club members crowded around it excitedly. Kofi read it once from his seat and said nothing. Later, when the room had emptied, Zara sat on the bench beside him. "You're entering," she said. "I didn't say that. You didn't have to. You've been working on that rescue robot for 3 months. It's ready." "It's not ready. Kofi." She turned to face him fully. "I have watched you rebuild that thing 4 times. Not because it was broken. Because you were scared to finish it. Finishing it means showing it. And showing it means people get to have an opinion about it." He was quiet for a long moment. "What if they laugh?" "Then they laugh," she said. "And then the robot still works. And their opinion still means nothing." She paused. "But they won't laugh. I've seen what that machine does. Enter the showcase." He looked at her. She looked back. No flinching, no softening, no false comfort. Just Zara, steady and certain in that way she had that made you feel like doubt was something you could simply choose to put down. He entered the showcase. The 2 weeks before it were the most alive Kofi had felt inside a school building. He arrived early and left late. He rebuilt the robot's camera housing, refined the wheel grip for uneven surfaces, wrote out his presentation 3 times until it stopped sounding like an apology and started sounding like an explanation. Zara drilled him on his delivery every evening in the robotics room, asking questions the way a judge might. Sharp, impatient, unconvinced. "Why rescue specifically?" she asked one evening. "Because when buildings collapse, the first problem isn't resources. It's access. You can't help someone you can't reach. Say that in your presentation. Exactly like that. It sounds too simple. Simple is not the same as shallow. Say it." He said it. She nodded. The night before the showcase, Neither of them left until Mr. Osei physically turned the lights off and told them to go home. They walked out together into the cold evening, their breath visible in the dark air. "Are you nervous?" Zara asked. "Completely," Kofi said. "Good. Nervous means it matters." They stood at the school gate for a moment. The city hummed around them. Kofi looked at her. Really looked, the way you look at someone when you're trying to memorize something without admitting that's what you're doing. "Thank you," he said. "For all of it." Zara smiled, not the quick social smile she gave to teachers and strangers, but the real one, the slower one that reached her eyes last. "Don't thank me yet. Win first." She walked away into the dark. He stood there a moment longer than he needed to. The showcase was held in the school hall on a Friday afternoon. Tables lined the walls. Students stood beside their projects, a solar-powered water filter, a noise-canceling study helmet, a hydroponic herb kit. Good projects. Competent projects. Kofi set up his rescue robot at the end table and tried to breathe. The judges arrived at 2:30. The hall filled with students, parents, teachers. Marcus and the pack were there, not to participate but to spectate, which for them meant the same as judge. Celine stood near the back with a group of girls, arms folded, watching. The demonstrations began. Each student had 5 minutes. When Kofi's turn came, the room gave him the particular silence reserved for people nobody expects much from. He stood behind his table, looked at the robot, then looked up at the room. He thought of Zara's voice. "Say it exactly like that. When a building collapses," he began, "the first problem isn't resources. It's access. You cannot help someone you cannot reach." He pressed the remote. The rescue robot moved. It navigated the obstacle course he had built on the table, through a narrow gap between 2 blocks, over an uneven surface, around a corner, stopping precisely at the small red marker that represented a survivor location. Its camera rotated. Its arm extended. It placed a small flag. The room was completely silent. Then one of the judges leaned forward. "Did you design the joint mechanism yourself?" "Yes." "And the camera rotation system?" "Yes. It's a modified servo mount. The rotation range is 210 degrees, which covers most blind angles in a collapsed structure." The judge wrote something down. Kofi's heart was hammering so loudly he was convinced the microphone would pick it up. Then the hall started clapping. Not politely. Not the restrained applause given to the solar filter and the hydroponic kit. Real applause, surprised and building. The kind that happens when a room realizes it has witnessed something it didn't expect. At the back, Marcus said nothing. He just stared. Celine uncrossed her arms. Kofi stood behind his table and felt something he had no previous reference point for. Not pride exactly. Something quieter and more permanent than pride. The feeling of being seen, fully, finally, without apology, and finding that the world did not end because of it. He found Zara's face in the crowd. She was already looking at him. She mouthed 2 words. "I knew." And for the first time in his life, standing in a room full of people, Kofi Mensah did not want to disappear. He won. Not just the showcase. He won the full sponsorship, a handshake from both engineers, and something far more difficult to quantify, the shift in how Brightwell Academy looked at him. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. But it happened. Teachers who had filed him under quiet, unremarkable started calling on him in class. Students who had looked through him started looking at him. The corridor felt different under his feet. Marcus never apologized. Boys like Marcus never do. But he stopped. And sometimes that is the closest thing to an apology the world offers. Celine was the unexpected one. 3 days after the showcase, she appeared at the robotics room door during lunch. Kofi was inside alone, making notes. She knocked on the open door frame, which surprised him. Celine had never knocked on anything in her life. She entered the room like she was unsure the floor would hold her. "That thing you built," she said. "The robot. What about it?" She was quiet for a moment, working something out. My uncle was in a building collapse 2 years ago. In Turkey. They found him after 19 hours. She paused. A robot like that could have been. She stopped. Looked away. Looked back. I just wanted to say it was a good thing you made. Kofi looked at her. The girl who had watched Marcus mock him without a word. The girl who had stood at the back of every humiliation like a silent shareholder. He could have said several things in that moment. He chose the truest one. I'm sorry about your uncle. Celine nodded once, tightly, and left. He told Zara about it that evening. They were on the rooftop. Their rooftop now, in the way that places become yours when enough meaningful things happen in them. The city stretched out below, amber and grey in the late afternoon light. She's not a bad person, Zara said. She just never had a reason to be a good one. You gave her one. I didn't do anything. You showed up. You showed what you were made of. That's not nothing, Kofi. That changes things. She pulled her jacket tighter. You change things. You just don't see it yet. He looked at her. The yellow jacket had been replaced today with a deep green one. She was always in color, Zara, like she had made a deliberate decision never to be dull. He had started to notice things like that. The way she tilted her head when she was thinking. The way she said his name, fully, both syllables, like it deserved the space. Can I ask you something? He said. You can always ask. Why me? When you first got here. You chose to sit next to me, you came to the rooftop, you pushed me toward the club. He paused. You could have sat anywhere. Made friends with anyone. Why me? Zara was quiet for a long moment. Below them, a car horn sounded and faded. Because you were the most interesting person in the room, she said. You just had your back to everyone so nobody could tell. She turned to look at him directly. I've spent my whole life around people who perform. Loud people. People who need an audience to feel real. You were the opposite. You were completely real and completely alone, and I thought, that's someone worth knowing. Kofi didn't trust himself to speak for a moment. Zara. Don't make it weird, she said, but she was smiling. I'm not making it weird. He stopped. Started again. I never had a person before. Someone in my corner. I didn't know what it felt like. How does it feel? He thought about it seriously, the way he thought about everything. Like a load-bearing wall, he finally said. Like something I didn't know the structure needed until it was there. Zara laughed. The real laugh, sudden and unguarded. You just compared me to a wall. A load-bearing one. It's a compliment in engineering. I'm putting that on my gravestone. They were both laughing now, and the laughter dissolved something that had been carefully held in place for weeks. The polite distance, the almost, the not quite. When it faded, they were sitting closer than they had been before, shoulders almost touching, the city quiet below them. Neither of them moved away. That was the night everything shifted, not with a declaration or a dramatic moment, but with the simple, terrifying decision to stop pretending that what was growing between them was just friendship. They didn't name it that evening. But they both knew. The way you know a season is changing before the calendar confirms it. The weeks that followed were the best of Kofi's life. He walked the halls of Brightwell differently. Not with arrogance. That was never in his nature. But with the quiet assurance of someone who has been reminded that they exist and that their existence has value. He and Zara were everywhere together. The robotics room. The rooftop. The corner table by the window at lunch that had become permanently, unofficially theirs. Celine began sitting 2 tables away with a different group. Quieter, less performative. She and Kofi exchanged nods in the corridor now. Small. Civilized. Enough. Mr. Osei entered Kofi's rescue robot into a regional youth engineering competition. Kofi found out on a Tuesday and stood in the corridor reading the email 3 times before his legs started working again. He ran to find Zara. She was at her locker. He held up his phone. She read the email. Her hand went to her mouth. Then she grabbed him, both arms, full embrace, no hesitation, and held on. He held on too. For a long time, neither of them let go. And standing there in the corridor of Brightwell Academy, surrounded by noise and movement and the ordinary chaos of a school day, Kofi Mensah felt, for the first time in his 16 years, completely and entirely found. The regional competition was 3 weeks away when Kofi told her. They were on the rooftop. It was a Tuesday. The sky was the color of old newspaper and the wind had a bite to it that said winter was no longer coming. It was here. Zara had her sketchpad open, working on something in charcoal. Kofi was supposed to be reviewing his competition notes. He hadn't turned a page in 20 minutes. My dad got a transfer, he said. Zara's hand stopped moving on the page. We're relocating. After graduation. He paused. Canada. He starts in September. The rooftop was very quiet. How long have you known? She asked. Her voice was careful, measured. The voice she used when she was managing something large. 3 weeks. She looked up. You've known for 3 weeks. I didn't know how to say it. She closed her sketchpad slowly, set it down, looked out over the city, their city, the one spread out below them that had become the backdrop of every important conversation they'd ever had. That's a long time to carry something alone, Kofi. I thought we were past that. I know. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just. She stopped. Exhaled. Canada. Canada. Another silence. The wind moved between them. What does this mean for the competition? She asked. Practical. She was always practical when she was hurting. She picked up the nearest logical thing and held on to it. I'm still competing. I leave after graduation. 2 months away. Zara nodded slowly. Then she said very quietly, and what does it mean for us? He had rehearsed an answer to this. He had written it out, actually, in the margin of his competition notes, in his cramped handwriting, the way he annotated everything that mattered. But sitting here, with her beside him and the city below and the winter sky pressing down on all of it, every rehearsed word dissolved. I don't know, he said honestly. I know what I want it to mean. But I don't know if wanting is enough. Zara looked at him for a long time. Long enough that he felt it. That look, the one that saw through every layer he had ever constructed. Tell me what you want, she said. You, he said. Simply. Finally. I want you. I've wanted you since you sat next to me on that rooftop and asked about my sketchbook like it was the most natural thing in the world. He looked at his hands. You made me real, Zara. Before you, I was just furniture, background. You looked at me and I became a person. I don't know how to explain what that does to someone. When he looked up, her eyes were bright. She blinked once, deliberate. You were always a person, she said. I just refused to let you forget it. She reached over and took his hand. Held it the way you hold something you intend to keep. We have 2 months, she said. Let's not waste them being sad about what comes after. They didn't. The regional competition came, and Kofi presented with a clarity and confidence that made Mr. Osei fold his arms and nod slowly from the back of the room like a man watching something he had always believed in finally arrive. The rescue robot performed flawlessly. The judges asked 15 minutes of questions. Kofi answered every single one. He placed second overall. First among all secondary school entrants. The engineer who shook his hand afterward held on a beat longer than necessary and said, Keep building. The world needs what's in your head. Kofi wrote it in his sketchbook that evening. Underlined it twice. Graduation came the way endings always do. Faster than expected, louder than you're ready for. The hall was full of families and flash photography and the particular bittersweet noise of a chapter closing. Kofi found Zara in the crowd afterward, both of them in their gowns, the sun finally out for the first time in weeks as though the weather had decided to make an effort. She handed him something. A folded piece of paper. He opened it. It was a drawing. Detailed, careful, unmistakably hers. A bird, wings fully extended, caught in the exact moment between falling and flying. In the margin, in her handwriting, "You were never falling. You were always about to fly." He couldn't speak. She didn't make him. "Real things wait," she said. "Remember that." He left for Canada on a grey Saturday morning in September. She stood with him outside the terminal, and they held on the way they had learned to hold, completely without embarrassment, without pretending it wasn't hard. Then he was gone. If you've ever loved someone across a distance, you know what the next 10 years looked like without being told. The calls that started daily, then weekly, then became letters because sometimes words need to be written to be true. The silence that grew, not from indifference, but from the sheer weight of separate lives pulling in separate directions. Kofi finished his engineering degree, then a postgraduate qualification, then began building. Real things, funded things, machines that went out into the world and did what they were designed to do. Zara studied art in London, then exhibited in Paris, then painted a mural on the side of a community center in Lagos that stopped traffic for 2 days. Both of them, extraordinary. Both of them, quietly aware of the shape the other had left behind. They lost contact in their mid-20s. Not dramatically, just gradually. The way rivers diverge. No argument. No ending. Just distance, doing what distance does. And then, on an ordinary Wednesday in an airport terminal, Kofi looked up from his boarding pass and stopped breathing. She was 20 feet away. Same eyes. Older, fuller, more herself than he had ever seen her. She was pulling a carry-on and reading something on her phone, and she hadn't seen him yet, and he had approximately 3 seconds to decide whether to move or to stand there and let her walk past and spend the rest of his life wondering. He moved. "Zara." She looked up. The 20 feet disappeared. They stood in the middle of the terminal, passengers streaming around them like water around stone, and looked at each other with the specific intensity of people who have a decade of unsaid things suddenly available to say. "You look," he started. "Don't," she said, but she was already smiling. "Good. I was going to say good. You look good too." She laughed, the real laugh, the sudden one, unchanged by 10 years. "What are you doing here?" "Flying home. Conference." He paused. "You. Exhibition. Lagos." She tilted her head. "You still have the sketchbook?" He reached into his jacket, pulled it out. Different cover now. Leather worn at the corners, but unmistakably the same book, unmistakably the same handwriting cramped into every margin. She took it, turned the pages slowly, the way she had the very first time on a rooftop in a city they were both too young to understand. "You kept building," she said softly. "You told me to." She closed the book, handed it back, looked at him. "I never stopped thinking about you," he said. "Not once. In 10 years, not one day. Kofi, I'm not asking for anything. I just..." He stopped, reached into his jacket pocket again, placed something small on the carry-on handle between them. "I found this in a market in Accra 2 years ago. I bought it and I didn't know why. I think I knew why." She looked down. A small bird. Silver. Wings fully extended. Caught in the exact moment between falling and flying. Her hand went to her mouth. "I'm not the boy from the rooftop anymore," he said quietly. "But I'm still the person you made real. And I've spent 10 years becoming someone worthy of saying this properly." He looked at her, completely without armor. "Come have coffee with me. And then dinner. And then, let's figure out the rest." Zara looked at the bird. Looked at him. Her eyes were bright, the same brightness, 10 years and 3 continents later, unchanged. "You still compare everything to engineering," she said. "It's a flaw. It's my favorite thing about you." She picked up the bird, held it in her palm, closed her fingers around it. "Coffee," she said. "Then dinner." She looked up. "Then everything." They walked out of the terminal together, into the noise and light of a city that had no idea it was witnessing the completion of something that had started on a rooftop, with a sketchbook, and a girl in a yellow jacket who refused to look away. Some loves are patient. Some loves are quiet. Some loves do not arrive with thunder. They arrive with a silver bird placed gently on a carry-on handle and a man who spent 10 years becoming worthy of the moment. Kofi Mensah was never the boy everyone overlooked. He was always the story nobody had read yet. And Zara Okonkwo, brilliant, bold, and completely herself, was the one who turned the first page. If this story moved you the way it moved us making it, please like this video and subscribe so you never miss a story like this. Drop a comment below and tell us, have you ever overlooked someone who turned out to be everything? We read every single one. See you in the next story.